In the year 2000, the turn of the millennium, a certain football club in Spain did the unthinkable. In a league dominated by Barcelona and Real Madrid, Deportivo La Coruna snatched the league title from the two powerhouses to cement their place in La Liga history. However, much to the disappointment of the club's supporters and general admirers in the world of football, Deportivo has since failed to find any consistency in their success. In fact, they have experienced one of the worst falls from grace of any football club in history. This capitulation did not happen overnight. It occurred as a result of a series of bad decisions made by the club's hierarchy. Decisions that involved financial mismanagement, disappointing business in the transfer window, and ill-advised managerial appointments. This review takes a look at this series of events to understand where it all went wrong for one of Spanish football's favourite champions. The years 1973 to 1988 spelled a period of doom and gloom for Deportivo La Coruna. They spent a large part of those years playing in the second tier of Spanish football, and there were even a couple of relegations to the Tercera division, which was the third tier. A significant portion of the problems that Depor was facing at the time was down to financial and other internal struggles. They were sacking managers nearly every year, and there was barely any form of consistency solid enough to build something lasting with the squad. After narrowly escaping another relegation to the third tier in the 1987-88 season, a new board of directors was selected to be in charge of the club. That board was to be led by the club president, Augusto César Lendoiro. The decision to make Lendoiro club president seemed a good one for Depor, as his arrival at the helm helped to steady the ship and bring about a period of huge fortune and success for the club.
Con este llamamiento que hacemos a la plantilla, a la afición, a los medios informativos, a todos y cada uno de los aficionados, creemos que podemos entre todos conseguir lo que durante 18 años se nos ha venido de ver.
It was no easy task too, as the state of the club in 1988 was desperate. The club was in debt of up to 600 million pesetas, which was the official currency in Spain at the time. They hadn't played in the top flight for 15 years, and there was an urgent need for internal stability. When Lendoiro took over as club president, one of the first and most important decisions made was to bring back former Depor player and manager Arsenio Iglesias. While the board tried to steady the ship and deal with the club's problems off the pitch, financially and otherwise, Arsenio was tasked with building the squad to be competitive enough to break into the top flight once again. Within 2 full seasons of joining Depor, Arsenio helped them to gain promotion back into the top flight after a long 18-year absence. The rebound effect of that promotion was that Depor's finances also began to improve. Better sponsorship deals came in, ticket prices went up, and broadcasting rights deals came through the door. The club took advantage of this rise to grace fairly well too, bringing in players that could help them to compete and stay in La Liga for years to come. Perhaps most significant during that period was the signing of Bebeto.
Para mim é uma satisfação grande, né? De ter esses torcedores aí perto de mim, torcendo pela gente. E pode ter certeza que eu vou corresponder à expectativa de todos, né?
He, alongside a few other shrewd signings, helped to raise the level of Depor and, in turn, the overall health of the club in other areas. He won the Pichichi Award for the highest goal scorer in the league in his second season, and he also ended up playing for Brazil in the World Cup final of 1994. Safe to say, he was one of the club's most successful signings. An initial relegation tussle in Depor's first season back in the big time was followed by a third-place finish in the 92-93 season, and then back-to-back runner-up finishes in the subsequent seasons. Depor was not only good enough for La Liga, Arsenio, with the backing of a board that seemed to know what it was doing, had made them genuine title contenders. The club did suffer a brief setback when Arsenio decided to leave in 1995. 3 managers in the 3 subsequent years failed to replicate what he'd done, but they got fourth time lucky with the appointment of another Spanish manager, Javier Irureta. Arsenio may have laid the foundation for Depor's success, but Irureta perfected it by taking the team to its first league title win in the 1999-2000 season. He spent 7 years at the club, and that period was the most successful for Depor in their history.
Yo tengo mi única superstición o mi creencia, soy religioso, normal, ¿no? Una persona, pero en el mundo del deporte yo creo que hay muchas cosas de esas.
Apart from the title win, Depor also became a team to respect in continental football, reaching the quarter-finals and semi-finals of the Champions League on 2 separate occasions. They also caused an upset when they beat Real Madrid at the Santiago Bernabeu to win the Copa del Rey in 2002. It was a significant moment in history because it was Real's 100th year anniversary and the Copa del Rey's 100th year anniversary too. It was a fantastic time to be a Depor fan, but things soon took a rather disappointing turn. Irureta's last season at Depor was also his most underwhelming. The club finished 8th in the league, which was disappointing because they'd consistently finished in the top 3 in the previous 5 years. Again, much like the situation when Arsenio first left, the coaches that replaced Irureta did not manage to replicate what he'd done with the squad. Their highest placed finish in the 6 years after Irureta's departure was 7th place under Miguel Angel Lotina. Ironically, Lotina also got them relegated in the 10-11 season, following a terrible run of form that saw Depor finish the season in 18th place. A couple of yo-yo seasons saw them drop in and out of the top flight until the 14-15 season, where they managed to stay afloat for a few years on the bounce. At that time, Depor had just gained promotion again from the second tier, this time led by manager Fernando Vázquez. A couple of controversial decisions in that year played a significant role in where the club is today. When he arrived at Depor as club president, the change in fortunes of the club supported the narrative that Lendoiro knew what he was doing, with the finances especially. However, as time passed, some new information came to light about just how he'd managed to steady the ship with the club's deep debt issues. Apparently, the lawyer-turned-politician had used a few connections to take out a series of loans to pay player salaries and service some of the outstanding debt. Basically, he borrowed money to pay off borrowed money. It was a risky model, but the success of the club on the pitch and subsequent perks enjoyed from it made it a risk that paid off, at least temporarily. The most important form of newly generated revenue came when the club started to participate regularly in the Champions League. However, due to the model of business with the strings of loans taken out beforehand, the extra income from these new sources of revenue soon became a necessity that could result in a collapse if stopped. Needless to say, that story did not end well. Lendoiro had basically bet on the club to continue succeeding on the pitch as they were, especially in Europe. And when that success faltered, the whole weight of the risky financial decisions made in the earlier years came crashing down on Depor. The club stopped qualifying for the Champions League, and that was a major revenue loss. Added to the fact that Lendoiro was receiving a salary of €400,000, it's easy to see how the club started losing millions. Soon enough, their debts caught up with them. It happened during that yo-yo period of bouncing between the second tier and La Liga. Lendoiro's creditors, the Spanish treasury in particular, came to collect. At the time, Depor was in debts of up to €160 million, and there was simply no form of revenue in their portfolio that could pay off the debts. This led to Spanish football's biggest insolvency hearing, and it was decided that the only way forward was for Lendoiro to resign. His reckless business model had fooled everyone at the start, but time had shown the facts of the matter. Lendoiro was replaced as club president by Constantino Fernandez Pico. For less informed persons, Tino's reign was the devastating one for Depor, and he remains one of the biggest scapegoats of the matter to this day, perhaps unfairly. During his 5-year reign, Tino managed to halve the club's debts, including €45 million owed to the government. This allowed Depor some respite, and they managed to stay in La Liga for a large part of that time. However, he had a bad reputation of hiring and sacking managers at will, appointing up to 9 managers within 5 years. This contributed to the instability of the club and their eventual relegation back to the second tier. It also influenced the negative disposition of the club's supporters towards Tino Fernandez. He was eventually voted out in May 2019, and there has been a regular change of hands in his old position since then.
Buenas noches, señoras y señores accionistas del Deportivo. El pasado 22 de abril comunicamos la decisión de renunciar a nuestros puestos en el Consejo de Administración.
If there's one thing to be learned from the situation of Deportivo La Coruna, it's the fact that all that glitters is not gold. From the outside, it appeared that the club had found a gem of a president in Augusto Cesar Lendoiro, but in reality, there was a rot deep inside that eventually presented itself for the public to see. It has been a steep fall from grace for the once beloved overachievers, and only time will tell if the faithful at La Coruna will see their beloved club challenge in La Liga once again.